if you're feeling really separated or really distant from your spouse, don't go on a trip expecting the trip to fix it, because it's kind of like, what is that saying they say about alcohol? It doesn't change who you are. It just makes you more of who you are, concentrates things.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're having some issues with feeling connected, the trip, the vacation could actually backfire and do the exact opposite and just make you feel more of the effects of that distance.
Yeah,
You know what
well,
I'm
I
getting
mean, I
at?
could see that potentially going in either way. That's a risk that you have to be weighing, because it could come out either way. It very well could be the case that anything that you guys are struggling with is going to be exemplified, and you're stuck on this trip
Emphasized.
and you've paid for this trip. But it could also go the other way of like, maybe it's a case of like kind of what ground zero is for you, what you're dealing with. Because if it's just like we need to reconnect, we sort of lost our way a little bit, then a trip together might be
Yeah.
a good thing.
My solution for this is to do a little bit of groundwork before you go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
Thank you so much for joining us, ladies. I'm really looking forward to this topic. We've been doing some heavy stuff. This is kind of a little on the lighter side.
Yes. And well, we love to travel. I know many of you out there also love to travel. And we had gotten a question from a listener about traveling as a couple. And we thought that what a great topic. What a great discussion to have.
Yeah, it is, because I think, as she had mentioned, and actually is a very good point that I guess I didn't give a lot of thought to until we started unpacking this, was we're used to, probably most of us, when we were traveling as a family and with the kids. So
right. I think she's just a little unsure and hesitant. So she went on after she asked her question about traveling as a couple, like she didn't want to go to Disneyland, or, like what exactly do you do? Like the pragmatic details of what does that look like when you're traveling together? What can you do? What are the options available to you?
Right, now that we're not, and it can feel like, so here's another bigger conversation on this too, which we're not going to get into completely today, but like, why not? Let's just go there.
No.
Well, it's like similar with travel and life in general. Our life and our travel really centered around the kids. And in some ways we lose track of our relationship with our spouse, right? Not only from a relationship, but probably even in a travel where we're like, I'm not sure what to do now.
Depends on the
kids
couple.
aren't there. Depends on the couple. But I think for a lot of women, they probably feel that. Would you agree? I think you're probably not that.
No, I just love to travel so much, and we have to travel for work, and my husband and I do the same thing. So we are very early on, took a lot of trips. Now, albeit none of them were for personal reasons. So I can kind of understand what she's getting at, because I do have a little anxiety when I think about just going on a actual leisurely trip with Mark alone. I mean, guys, listen to this. We've only done that one time ever in our entire 23 years. We just celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary. And by the way, it wasn't our honeymoon. We never took one. So it was literally a few years ago. We decided we were going to do a trip just for us. And we went to Montreal as a couple in the winter. It was a beautiful trip. And the reason we chose that is partly some of my helpful advice that I have for this conversation that we're going to get into.
Great. I do remember you taking that trip, because then you forced me and Kenny to take a trip, because we were thinking, I remember that year, because I was trying to nail you guys down.
Or forced you?
No, it forced. I was trying to get a couples trip together. And you guys
fun.
were like, we just committed to doing something alone. So Kenny and I were like, well, okay, we don't have a couple to travel with. I guess we got to do something
Where
together.
did you guys go?
We went to, where did we go? Went to Naples for a long weekend.
Right. Mm-hmm. And have you done that in your marriage much? Like how many
surprisingly, we did that at least once, if not 2 or 3 times, when we still lived in Pennsylvania and the kids were very small.
Right, because you had family support to take
We
care of
had
them.
somebody that I could leave the kids with and feel comfortable. And it wasn't actually, might have one of the times I might have been nursing because I may have been able to leave enough to go for like a night or two. It was not a big trip. It was like somewhere that we drove to. But we did make a point of, I guess you couldn't say a point because it wasn't like we did that yearly, but there, I do know of a couple trips that we took where it was just the two of us just to like catch our breath. So, and at that
So
time,
smart to do that when your kids are little,
especially when your kids are little, you really need it.
especially then.
And if you're doing that, then when they get older, we're not
Then it's a
having this
habit,
conversation of like,
right?
what do we do now?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you could be like that, or you can be in my boat where we're very used to spending time together. For Pete's sake, we work together. So we're together all day long, but there's different hats that you wear. And it's definitely a training that took place in conditioning where we have to take our work hat off and put on our romantic hat. And we blur the lines all the time, but the better our relationship and the better synced up we are romantically, just the better all around.
Sure.
And the more we stick to those, I have so much to say about working with your spouse. It's not something I recommend, but I definitely wouldn't change it for us because we've, through much scar tissue, we've figured it out how to make it work for us. But back to the travel, the dynamic is certainly changing now that the kids are older. And that's the point where, we're discussing is no matter, even if you did do the trips when the kids were young, things are different now and possibly interests have shifted and maybe there's time constraints that weren't there before, or maybe you're caring for other people and essentially the dynamic has changed, but it's still important to take that time together.
Yes. I'm going to guess that for most of us in this community, it would be we didn't make enough time for it when the kids were little just because there was too much time going on. And if we didn't have a lot of expendable income, probably a lot of the expendable income we had was going towards
Spent on
the
the
kids.
Yeah,
and
I
trips
think
with
you're
them.
probably right.
So now we're at a point where like this gal wrote in and asked of like, so how, like, what does that look like now at this age?
Yeah.
Because it's different. And I love it. And I actually too, before we get into that, I never really thought of as much traveling as you and Mark do together because you guys travel a lot.
Yeah. So,
but it's never just the two of you. There's always like
people
groups of people around.
But when Lila was little, we would do a better job of like having a day on the front of the seminar where it was just he and I, and we would at least have a nice dinner or lunch or a breakfast and a workout together, or stroll around the whatever city we were staying in. So, I mean, we certainly had plenty of time built in to those trips for some couple time. When I was thinking about this topic and answering her question, I was like, the first thing that came to mind, and tell me if you agree with me, is like, for Pete's sake, if you're feeling really separated or really distant from your spouse, don't go on a trip expecting the trip to fix it, because it's kind of like, what is that saying they say about alcohol? It doesn't change who you are. It just makes you more of who you are, concentrates things.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're having some issues with feeling connected, the trip, the vacation could actually backfire and do the exact opposite and just make you feel more of the effects of that distance.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
at?
I could see that potentially going in either way. That's a risk that you have to be weighing because it could come out either way. It very well could be the case that anything that you guys are struggling with is going to be exemplified and you're stuck on this trip and you've paid for this trip. But it could also go the other way of like, maybe it's a case of like kind of what ground zero is for you, what you're dealing with. Because if it's just like somehow we need to reconnect, we sort of lost our way a little bit, then a trip together might be a good thing.
My solution for this is to do a little bit of groundwork before you go away. I mean, you can still plan the trip, but in the weeks leading up to that, do some groundwork. Download our Reconnecting with Your Spouse in an Empty Nest PDF.
That's great.
And in that, we talk about meeting up and how to meet each other where we're at inside of a normal week at our home and feeling connected there.
Yeah.
right? We have great suggestions and things that we've done personally,
Mm-hmm.
month after month after month, year after year with our spouses. So that's my first piece of advice, is to go into the trip already feeling a little bit connected.
Mm-hmm.
But my second piece is to choose wisely. And I think that's what this listener was getting at. She was wanting to get to the crux of like, what do we do if it's not going to be Disneyland? She's like, although some couples go. So Lila's teacher, they've never had children, and they once a year, her and her husband go to Disneyland. They love it.
Yeah.
So I mean, perfect if that suits you. But I sounded to me like that wasn't going to be her idea of a great trip.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. That's a case of you have to come into agreement. And honestly, if that was Ken's cup of tea, I would be all for it. I'd be like, sign me up, because I love to go to Disney. Like, I love to go to Disney. I love to ride rides. I love all of it. Kenny doesn't. So that's not something we're going to do together, because he's not going to be happy. And I'm sure you're getting to that. Like, you have to come to a common ground and give a little bit for each person. But back up for a second, because you two were just in Disney World too, and you had a great time for nationals
Yes, and we
last
go
year.
again next week because that's where they dance, is
Yeah.
right in Disney World. Disney World? Disneyland.
Disney World
Whichever.
is Florida.
Okay, Disney World. So we did. We went to Epcot,
Yeah.
and that's a great place for couples, actually. It's very
Yeah.
food centric, and with all the different countries, and not as kid friendly as the other parks are kid centric, I guess. And first time there as an adult, and just we had a ball.
Yeah.
We had a ball because it kept us on the move. And so when we talk about this, we would be remiss if we didn't go back to the 4 types and the quiz, which is remarkable relators, diligent doers, magnificent motivators,
Mm-hmm.
and awesome analytical, because you can look at your husband and know his type very easily based on those descriptions in our quiz that you guys have probably all taken. And if you haven't, it'll be in the show notes. So go and take it. But it's so smart to go into a holiday knowing who your husband is, knowing who you are, and what is going to set you guys up for the best success in a trip, especially if this is like your first in a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
So unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So Mark and I are both diligent. So he's a diligent doer. I'm an awesome analyzer. So I'm sorry, I was going to say we're both the same. We share some similar talents inside of that. But overall, I love new things and learning and culture, and like, let's go do a cheese making class or I want to go to a museum and listen to the tour guide talk. Because I just love, I'm a learner, and I love just feeling like my brain is getting a workout.
Yes.
Okay. He just likes to be busy. He's not a sit around and spend 5 days in the lounge chair. He's just not. So there's a lot of options for that combination, right? You can imagine it's the Epcots, the keeping busy. So cities work really great for us.
I'm sure. City tours.
Like especially cities that have a lot to offer, like some history, like a Charleston, or, Vegas is a great option for us because gosh, if you can't find it in Vegas, it doesn't exist,
Yeah.
So keeping busy. For he and I, for our only trip, if we only got one, to go to a beach, which is what everybody mostly defaults to when they think about vacation, and sit at a resort in the same, with the same restaurants and the same beach for 3 or 4 days, that would be disastrous, because we would get restless, and that restlessness would come out in like probably feeling irritated, and it's not going to be our best selves as couple.
Interesting. I would say the exact opposite for Ken and I.
Yeah. So I think it's why it's fun to talk
It
about,
is.
right? Because most people are going to be like, well, what's wrong with a beach vacation? Absolutely nothing. But like that for me and Mark would be the worst thing possible. So just giving some thought to, there are other options.
Yeah. Well, so for me, from my perspective, and you're right, it's why it is so fun to talk about this stuff, because and we're all different in all of our relation, and not only are we different, but then our spouses are also different relationships. So everything is a little bit different. You have to find what works for you. So it's good to talk about all viewpoints, but I'm a diligent doer. But when I go on vacation, I don't want to be doing things all day long, which is weird because when I'm at home, I have to be doing things all day long. And maybe it's because I'm burning the candle too hard that when I do go away, it's like I like a perfect combination of doing some, but I also like my downtime. But for me, my idea of the best vacation with Ken, and I would love to have Ken here to see what he would say, but I would say it's to go to a beach resort somewhere warm. But we would probably be doing, and I would want to, and I think we talked about this beforehand, give you all the grace if you're listening and talking about going on a trip with your spouse to not feel like you have to spend every moment of that vacation with each other. Because we would probably go, he doesn't, for to go to a city, yeah, he likes that. He loves a good meal. We are both have common ground there. We both would do some tours. We both like to learn. So the history would be good. But like a city for me is exciting too because I love to shop and browse and he hates that. So like he would just be like, he would hate that if we were like, that would not be part of the trip. And so there would be some like disconnect
Discord.
there. But we both enjoy a warm weather and downtime, but I think what that would look like for us is probably me spending a lot more time just relaxing and reading at the pool or the beach and him golfing.
So what I'm hearing is you guys build in plenty of time to do things that make yourselves fill up your own individual cups. Like
Yes.
he golfs and then you reconvene at the end of the day and enjoy a nice meal and that's and that works for you.
Yeah.
Because there can be a lot of pressure, you know, at least ladies, if we're being honest, when we go away with our husbands, like, you know, there's a lot of pressure for it to look a certain way and for certain amount of the time to be spent a certain way. But it doesn't need to be that. You can just release that pressure and do your own thing and then come back together and share the day.
Yeah, I do. I really do think so because, you know, that lets go of the issue where you're like, well, I want to do this and why doesn't he want to do it with me? Like if he really cared about me, he would do it. But then you're forcing him to do something he's not going to have fun at and it's like who's happy then?
No one.
So it's like give them like that's okay if they don't want to do that. I mean, if it's not a hill, if it's something that's really that important to you that you want to experiment with them, then you need to voice that. And if I voice that to Ken, and I can give you a perfect example of that, but like in most cases, I think it's okay to like.
What's your example?
Yeah. So last year when we were in France and London, on the back end, we came back to London and there was a place that I really wanted to go to for high tea. And we went to a different one the day before with you and Lila. And then the next day, you and Lila couldn't go because Lila was sick. And I was like, oh, I really wanted to go to this place. And I tried to get my son Anthony and his girlfriend because I thought of all the people left besides you and Lila, I would be most likely to convince them to go. And I could do that by myself. And there have been times where I've just been like, nobody else wants to, it's fine, I'll do it. But in that situation, it's not going to, that type of thing at that venue was not going to be fun by yourself. Although there was a woman there that was by herself and she seemed happy.
I love that for her.
Yeah. But anyway, so I could, and I never even asked my husband because I just figured
it was a like, voluntold type of situation.
And he was like, I want to go with you.
Oh,
and I was like,
that's nice.
What? And he's like, yeah, he's like, nice. You didn't ask, but like, I would like to go with you. I know it's important to you. I'll go.
Good job, Ken.
So I was like, okay, great. And he ended up coming, I think, because he just came because he felt bad for me. And not because I was whining about it, but just because he was seeing what was happening. And when I tell you, like, that would never be something my husband would want to go do because it was this like Art Deco type place. It was all women and daughters or like girlfriends like very girly out together.
Very girly.
It was like a string quartet of them playing like like Bridgerton music, like current music, but on the strings. And it was like them pouring all this bubbly champagne and all. But that man had a ball.
Well, let's face it, Ken would have a ball in a locked closet by himself.
Yeah, he's pretty easy. Is good at going with the flow. But we did
that
have that was one of the highlights of the trip. And who would have ever known like that he would want to do that and that he would actually end up enjoying it. And so my point is sometimes you don't know until you ask or like give your spouse the benefit of the doubt because you never know. Maybe they will want to end up doing something with you.
That's great. Back to the 4 mom types and
yes,
like the
Sorry, I stole your thunder.
corollary topic of the dad types.
Yep.
Remarkable relators. So if you're a remarkable relator, you are going to give some thought to traveling with friends. So
Yeah.
why does it have to be just you and your husband? Maybe one of you really needs that, wants that. But now that there's all this time at home with just the two of you, that's not necessarily something that you potentially need as much. So you're going to love um, spending time with people because as a remarkable relator, you prioritize your friendships and your connections with people more than anything, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so find some friends to travel with. I mean, who I think who wouldn't think that sounds fun, especially if they're the right kind of people. There are 3-day friends. We say don't go on a trip with 3-minute friends or three
Right.
hour friends. Make sure it's tried and tested, because that is really a litmus test for a friendship. If you can travel with them, they are good friends.
Yeah, because you're spending long periods of
Mm-hmm.
time and all day, and you've got to be on the same page as some of the. Yeah, it really is true.
Yep. As for our magnificent motivators, which that's who Ken is,
Mm-hmm.
um, give some thought to something significant. So, doing something significant. So, mission trips, do that together. How exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about like kindling, stoking the fires. Can you imagine going on a mission trip with your husband and, spending all day sweating, doing good, sweating, doing good things for others, whatever that is, building a church or a couple friend of ours went to Cambodia one year and
Oh,
visited a
that's cool.
charity that they donate to where they make water, um, digging water wells.
Mm-hmm.
And that was their couples trip. They went to visit this charity, so maybe you don't have to do the work. And then they went to this beautiful resort. So you could couple it, right? But thinking about doing something significant that really taps into that beauty of our magnificent motivators.
I love that. Um, that's really, that's really thinking outside of the box, doing a service project together. I have my brother and his wife are going sometime this year. It's on their like goals framework anyway. This is not exactly the same because it's not necessarily a missions trip, but just thinking outside of the box, they're going. She's very passionate for rescuing animals and animals that have problems. So there is a huge elephant sanctuary in Thailand. So they're going to a resort in Thailand for some time, but they're also going to spend time at the sanctuary. So really, really a cool thing, right? If you know what you're passionate, sometimes you can take the things that you're passionate about and couple it with a trip. So that makes it even more.
Okay, and that just brings home my example because she is a magnificent motivator. I would
Mm-hmm.
venture to bet, right? I don't know
Right.
personally,
Yeah,
but
exactly. So
I
it's a
don't
good,
know
another
exactly,
hard
but
example.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
that's just works for them. And then we have our awesome analyzers, which we also already spoke to around just learning and culture and history. And these are needs of ours. So the more comfortable you are and the more accepting you are of who you are and not wanting to be a different type, the more you can vocalize, hey, this is what I would love to do. And can we come together and find the middle ground? Because each of these categories has some overlap,
Yes.
right?
And that's probably where, because you're an awesome analyzer, where you guys love going to a city because
I
you're
love the
scratching the itch.
learning
You
and
go to a museum
yep,
or like
and he loves to
historical
keep
sites.
busy.
Yeah. So it's a
So it's
win-win for
perfect.
both of you.
Yep. Yep. You can make that case for any combination here.
And P.S. You two both love shopping.
What? Do you even know my husband? He does not love shopping.
What? He loves shopping for himself?
He does love shopping for himself on trips. You're right. And the reason he does is because we both get in, get out. We're
Yeah.
not browsers, we're not lollygaggers when it comes to shopping. So if it was sorry to throw you under the bus here, but if it was your style of shopping,
Neither of you would be here for it.
he would not be here for it.
Yeah.
And I can't. No.
Yeah. Oh, I know that. That's interesting. Okay. I just know I've heard you say in the past of like, I can never do shopping when I'm with them because he's shopping for himself
Yeah,
and she's shopping and they want me to look at what they're getting. I
I
don't have
know.
time to look for what I
No,
want.
because I have to analyze it
Yeah.
and I can't think about my brain and what I need when they're constantly coming up to me and being like,
Yeah.
Mom, what do you think of this? And by the way, I love that. So I'm happy, I'm happy to help them. But I probably need to take a trip to just go shopping for myself. Has anybody ever done that ever?
I'm going on a shopping trip by myself.
You're not invited. I will be shopping all day, all night. No, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that, but I'd probably get everything I needed because I would just spend inordinate amounts of time analyzing it and then come home with
and you
things
return
that
half of it.
I'm returning. Yeah, that's how that would go down. So
anyway,
yeah.
Moving on. Yeah, those are all great pieces of advice. I think an interesting piece that I find for myself that plays out in my own life when you bring up like, and this is just playing devil's advocate here a little bit, but like talking about somebody being, and Ken's not a remarkable relator, but he is number one woo, which means he's like super gregarious, outgoing, wants to win people over, and is always talking.
That's an influencing talent. It's
that, okay. So influencing, but
motivating.
Sort of like, I guess maybe, I don't know then, but to me, I would make the case that like for him, he was going to love going on trips with couples because he loves to woo. But sometimes I'm like, when we go on a trip with everyone around, I don't even talk to him. And it's not because he's ignoring me. It's just because he's so busy working the room that it's like, like it's better for us sometimes too. We probably should make a better point of like doing stuff on our own just so we can actually connect.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line there. If you're looking to reconnect with your spouse, going with groups of people is maybe not the best way to do that for everybody. I don't know.
Yeah. No. I love that.
Yeah.
So, and then just on a high level, some other ideas, other than the amusement park, although I will second that that's not a bad idea. It doesn't have to be Disneyland. It could be, I mean, if you like fast rides or if you're up for the challenge and up for getting a little adrenaline rush, Universal Studios is great. You've got SeaWorld with roller coasters. Those are just the ones in Florida. They're all over our country.
Yeah.
Right. Amusement parks can be super fun, but you can also do things like visiting national parks. Like, right? What a cool idea, getting out in nature. Even if you don't like hiking, you can drive to these places, do the overviews, overlooks, take pictures. Do a pre-scheduled tour. If the thought of planning a trip is where you guys get tripped up, look into a tour that's already scheduled or use Chat GPT. I know some of you guys maybe haven't started to use AI, but for things like that, it's super helpful. You download that app and you just go in and you ask Chat GPT, what would you recommend for a 2-day, 3-day, whatever the length of time is for a husband and wife who want to reconnect in an empty nest? And these are our interests in general, or this is the type of person that they are, what they would like, what they wouldn't like. The more specific that you get with writing that question for Chat GPT to answer, the better response you're going to get back and the more tailored to you. We've done that for a couple of trips going to places that we didn't know much about. And it's that's sort of how we planned our Portugal trip, part of it. Got some ideas from it. You don't have to subscribe to it from A to Z, but you'll get more than likely a great couple of ideas.
Yeah. Fill in the blanks. I love that. That's a great tip. And back to the tours, like that for sure is something for you to look into. If you haven't done a lot of traveling yet, you want to start, you want to go with your spouse and it feels overwhelming and you're not sure where to go or the place you want to go, you don't know a lot about, those tours can be, and some of them are very affordable. And I know people that have done that later on in life with their spouse, and they've also walked away with like brand new friendships because they meet other couples on the tour that they keep in touch with. So it's like a win-win. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind.
And the same could be said for a cruise.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, so many
opportunities. It's scheduled out, the ports of call, there's other people, so many opportunities.
Yeah.
Yep. Or go to a resort, but do many of those resorts have these, tours that you can sign up for and do, and, optional, obviously, but do something here and there on a day that's already taken care of.
Right. Ken's cut my husband's cousin 2 summers ago. They live in Pennsylvania and they came to visit us in New Hampshire in the summer. And on their way home, they were stopping in New York to stay with a couple that they had met on a tour in Italy.
Oh, fun.
So, it is possible. We talk about making connections and wanting to make new friends. You never know. You could build new relationships.
There
Ironically,
you go.
when you're on vacation,
Find people
so you never
who
know.
love to travel like you do, and if
Right.
you can't, and if you don't have those people at home, I mean, what a great connection to foster.
Well, you've already found someone with a shared interest because they're traveling
Right.
and they're at a place that you both like. So,
yeah.
So anyway,
Right time, right place.
Yeah. Do you have any other comments before we wrap up? Any other tips?
No, I makes me want to take a trip.
I know you are. You get the travel bug.
I do. I get the itch, but we get to go and watch my daughter next week. So
I do think there's one other thing to be said because you talk about a lot about how it's so important to change things up and like do something out of your norm so that you don't feel like the time is just flying by. You don't get stuck in a rut. And here's a situation if you're feeling a little stuck in a rut with your relationship and just the same old, maybe you can use a trip together to kind of change things up a little bit.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's nothing like travel to make you feel like you're growing a little bit, like exposing to yourself to new food, new culture, whatever it is, even if it's right here in our own country. It's a great way to jumpstart that. And like I said, just go into it already doing some of the groundwork to feel emotionally connected and understanding who your spouse is and where they're coming from so that you guys can just go and revel in the fun and the beauty, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Just go have some fun on a trip together.
To that end, so I'm going to link the coffee break, the couples guide.
Reconnecting with your spouse.
Yep. And I will also, I'm going to link the goals framework again, because in the goals framework, there is a part for travel that you want to build. And it would be a good idea for you to sit down with your spouse if it's past the start of the year, if it's midway, whatever you are, but you get into the habit of having travel as one of your goals and planning out. Because if you don't write it down and you don't talk about it, it's likely not going to happen. Like you can think about it and say, oh, I really want to go here. But until you get strategic about writing it down and committing to it, both of you, it might not happen. So be aware of that as well. Be intentional.
What gets written gets done.
Yeah.
In our house.
Yep.
If it's not written down, it's probably not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a lot like that for a lot of people.
It's not guaranteed to happen if it's written down, but the chances of success and of it happening are far greater than if it's not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Good stuff. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for all the latest updates. Head over to www.lifeafterkids.com where you'll find all of our free resources and the blog. And if you prefer to watch us instead of listening, we're on YouTube. So ladies, have a great day and an even better week.
Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you write in and let us know where you're traveling to next.
I'd love to hear that.